Hello and welcome to ProSell TV. Today I'm joined by David Vachell, Learning and Development Manager within the BT organisation, and we're going to be talking about coaching and how that can help generate greater levels of sales and service behaviours in organisations.
I have to say that I think as a general rule I don't see general evidence that it's embedded as a practice across the board. I think
coaching?
Learning and development, generally. We'll talk about coaching more specifically, I guess, in a minute, but certainly learning and development, there is still a lot of lip service paid to it. It's still a necessary evil in a lot of organisations that I'm aware of. More and more are beginning to see it as being strategic, but still it's a long way to go before it really becomes embedded as a fundamental part of practice. The role of the first line manager is probably the most critical of all when it comes to people's behaviour. Generally speaking, you can produce the best training in the world about how people should do things, but unless they are encouraged to go on and work like that by the person to whom they are turning for advice and guidance and on a daily basis, it won't stick. So I think the first line manager as a coach is probably the hinge point for a huge amount of organisational behaviour, particularly towards customers. So when you come to customer service people or sales people, the sales manager, the service manager, the shift manager in a support centre, they have such a fundamental role to play in that. And the way in which they approach that is absolutely fundamental as well. So if you've got a manager who is a driver, do as I tell you, you'll get results out of that, but you'll also tend to find that the reaction of the people within the organisation tend to be less good, if you like, less self-driven, less intrinsic than if the manager has a more coaching and facilitative style. Now, I know that sometimes coaching is seen as a bit of a soft touch, as a bit of a soft approach to doing things. But I think that's a mistake by people. I mean, coaching, I think it's Mary Cantor, I can't remember who it was, wrote a book called Executive Coaching with Backbone and Heart. I think it's such a great title because if you don't have backbone as well as heart in coaching, then the coaching is very, very less than fully efficient. And it has to have both. I think that's true of all learning and development, all performance improvement issues. You have to have strength as well as softness with it.
What do you think of the sort of the inhibitors or barriers that seem to stop frontline managers really engaging with their employees to coach effectively?
That's because they do what they think their boss wants them to do. So the next level in the chain is another one. I mean, they have a role to play too, and that's about encouraging the behaviour of the first line managers. So increasingly we see that the role of our sales directors, for example, who are the next level up, is so crucial to the way in which the sales managers perform. So it is always that relationship between you and the next one up the hierarchy, if you like. And it doesn't matter whether it's a traditional hierarchy or whether it's a matrix management situation where maybe you're working for a project manager. I think the same rules apply. Someone has some power of authority over what you do, and you turn to them naturally for approval or guidance or whatever. So I think the coaching model applies just as well at those middle to senior ranks as it does to the first line rank.
So David, coaching and training, how do you differentiate between the two? What's your personal interpretation of those? And maybe you could tell me a little bit about why you believe that coaching is seen to be such a powerful part of the learning and development armoury today.
I guess the major difference is the way in which it's personalised. Coaching is predominantly a one-to-one. I know that you can talk about sports coaching, for example, where there are teams involved, but even in sports coaching, you're generally working at a one-to-one level. And you're working on a very specific context for that engagement. And it's usually about some particular piece of performance that the subject of the coaching has been struggling with or trying to change. With training environments, and by which I'm sort of thinking in terms of the traditional courses or e-learning, you're generally speaking in a much more mass environment. You're talking with a class of people or a group of people, even if it's whether it's a traditional classroom affair where you've got a dozen or so people in, whether it be an e-learning environment where you're trying to address perhaps thousands of people with a particular module, or whether it's some complicated action learning program where you may have a group of people going through a variety of different programs to satisfy an overall objective. But it's still more of a common approach as opposed to the one-to-one approach you have in coaching.
How do you go about evaluating and validating the impact of coaching within organisations?
I think with coaching, the principles aren't actually very different. The principles still start with, what are we trying to achieve? What did we do? What was the effect of that? And those are the three questions you've actually got to ask yourself in any form of evaluation, whether it be traditional training or whatever. I don't think you can use the same tools in terms of the participant reaction stuff. So the reaction stuff is very much more difficult, I think, with coaching. But I think in terms, when you get to the deeper things, is the coachee now behaving in a way which is the way we want people to behave in line with our corporate objectives? You can apply the same principles there as you could with a training program.
Sure.
That's the other aspect that we've got to get ourselves involved with. I think one of the things that I would love to see is an approach by the learning and development profession that is focused more on performance improvement as a systemic issue, as opposed to just thinking we deliver training or we deliver coaching or we deliver whatever. It's got to be looking at the big picture.
Sure.
We're very good at, as a profession, we're good at designing a learning event, we're very good at designing e-learning, but we're not locating it systemically within the overall picture. And the trouble is that when you're good with a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So we go on doing good training stuff, and we do some really good stuff. There's some really excellent training material out there, but until we take a systemic view of things, we're not really going to be taken seriously by the businesses or the economy.
So David Vachell, thank you ever so much for your time today. Very much appreciated.